Welcome to Chapter 8, Leveraging Secondary Brand Associations to Build Brand Equity. So today we're going to look at outlining the 8 ways to leverage secondary associations. We'll explain the process by which a brand can leverage secondary associations, and we'll look at some of the key tactical issues in leveraging secondary associations from different entities. So this chapter looks at the ways in which secondary associations can be leveraged to build brand equity. And secondary associations are links to other entities that have their own knowledge structures in the minds of consumers. The ability to borrow brand knowledge and potentially brand equity creates leverage for us marketers. Now, these secondary brand associations can help create strong, favourable and unique associations or positive responses in new ways. There are 8 ways to leverage secondary associations to build brand equity, and these are by linking the brand to companies through branding strategies, countries or other geographic areas, through identification of product origin, channels of distribution, through channel strategy, other brands, through co-branding, characters, through licensing, spokespersons, through endorsements, events through sponsorship, and last, third-party sources through awards or reviews. And this chapter looks to leverage secondary associations and provide us with information on how the company has to relinquish some control over the branding process. In particular, managing the transfer process so that only the relevant secondary associations become linked to the brand, and this becomes difficult. So what does the chapter kind of go through? Well, it looks at how brands can build brand equity by leveraging related or secondary brand associations. That brands may be linked to other entities that have their own knowledge structures in the minds of consumers, and that consumers infer some of that associations or responses that characterize the other entities also become true for the brand. The brand also borrows brand knowledge, and this also sometimes allows the brand to borrow brand equity. The indirect approach to building brand equity is leveraging secondary brand associations for the brand. And secondary brand associations can create strong, favourable and unique associations or positive responses if existing brand associations or responses are deficient. It can be an effective way to reinforce existing associations and responses. So let's have a look. Now, we discussed the different types of secondary brand associations, and the ones, for example, like companies, countries or other geographic areas or channels of distribution. These reflect source factors: who makes the product, where the product is made, where it's purchased, and the remaining ones that we discussed previously deal with related people, places or things. Now, these secondary brand associations are most likely to affect evaluations of a new product when consumers lack either the motivation or the ability to judge product-related concerns. Effects on existing brand knowledge. So, linking the brand to some other entity can create new brand associations to that entity and affect also existing brand associations. So, consumers have some knowledge of an entity, and when a brand is identified as linked to that entity, consumers may infer that some of those associations, the judgments or the feelings that characterize the entity, may also characterize the brand, perhaps due to cognitive consistency. Now, 3 important factors predict the extent of leverage from linking the brand to another entity. Awareness and knowledge of the entity. What does a consumer know about the other entity? The meaningfulness of the knowledge of the entity, and transferability of the knowledge of the entity. Does any of this knowledge affect what they think about the brand? When they think about the brand, when it becomes linked or associated in some fashion with this other identity. Now, consumers can infer any aspect of knowledge from other entities to the brand, and some of the entities are more likely to create or affect brand knowledge than others. Now, any one entity may be associated with multiple dimensions of knowledge, each of which may affect brand knowledge directly or indirectly. Judgments or feelings may transfer more readily than more specific associations, which are likely to seem irrelevant or be too strongly linked to the original entity to transfer. So it's a very complex process that we've discussed. You've got the brand and the other entity, and in the middle is transfer with all these things going on. Now, things to keep in mind are that there are some guidelines for this. So leveraging secondary brand associations may allow us as marketers to create or reinforce an important point of difference, or a necessary or competitive point of parity versus the competitors. We as marketers need to take into account consumers' awareness of the linked entity and its associations, the judgments, the feelings which might become linked to the brand or affect existing brand associations. A commonality leveraging strategy makes sense when consumers have associations to another entity that are congruent with desired brand associations. And a complementary branding strategy can be used when there are a few, if any, common or similar associations, but it has to overcome confusion or skepticism. So even if consumers buy into the association one way or another, leveraging secondary brand associations may be risky because the marketer gives up control of the brand image. The source, factors or related person, place or thing will undoubtedly have a host of other associations, of which only some smaller set will be of interest to the marketer. Now, managing the transfer process so that only the relevant secondary knowledge becomes linked to the brand is extremely difficult. And the knowledge may change, and new associations may or may not be advantageous for the brand. Company. Now, branding strategies are obviously important determinants of the strength of association from the brand to the company and other existing brands. And 3 branding options exist for a new product. We can create a new brand, we can adopt or modify an existing brand, or we can combine an existing brand and a new brand. A corporate or a family brand can be a source of brand equity, or sometimes a corporate or family brand is hidden. Now, brands and companies are often unavoidably linked to the category and industry in which they compete, sometimes with adverse consequences. Country of origin and other geographic areas. The country or geographic location from which it originates as a brand may also become linked to that brand and generate secondary associations. For example, made in Australia. Now, the world is becoming a cultural bazaar where consumers can pick and choose brands originating in different countries, and you can see this walking down any Coles or Woolworths aisle today. And choosing brands with strong national ties may reflect a deliberate decision to maximise product utility and communicate self-image based on what consumers believe about products from those countries. Now, marketers can establish a geographic or country of origin association by embedding the location in the brand name, making the location the dominant theme in brand advertising. And other countries have developed and advertised labels or seals for their products. For example, we have the green and gold or green and yellow made in Australia. It is typically a legal necessity for the country of origin to appear somewhere on the product or package. So it's a question of relative emphasis on the package and through the marketing program. Marketers should consider the favourability of a country of origin association from both a foreign and domestic perspective. Now, patriotic appeals have been the basis of marketing strategies all over the world. And one of the challenges with country of origin is how consumers define it and under what circumstances the consumers also care. Now, country of origin can become confusing in this increasingly globally connected world, resulting in stipulations about labelling from some countries. Channels of distribution. Retail stores can indirectly affect brand equity through an image transfer process because of consumers' associations linked to the retail stores. And because of associations to product assortment, pricing and credit policy, quality of service and so on, retailers have their own brand images in consumers' minds. So retailers create associations through the products and brands they stock, and the means by which they sell them. Consumers may perceive the same brand differently, depending on where it is sold. And the transfer of store image associations can be either positive or negative for a brand. Co-branding, also known as brand bundling or brand alliances, when two or more existing brands are combined, the associations transfer between the brands. Co-branding has a long history, but it also has advantages and disadvantages. Co-branding can create a more compelling point of difference, or points of parity for the brand, or both, than otherwise might have been feasible. Co-branding can reduce the cost of the product introduction because it combines two well-known images, accelerating potential adoption. And co-branding may be a valuable means to learn about consumers and how other companies approach them. It can help create a distinctive product in poorly differentiated categories. Some of the disadvantages include the lack of control that arises from becoming aligned with another brand in the minds of consumers, though. Expectations can be high, and unsatisfactory performance could lead to negative repercussions for both or all of the brands involved. And if the brands are distinct, consumers may be less sure about what each brand represents. So what are some guidelines? Well, to create a strong co-brand, both brands should have adequate brand awareness, sufficiently strong, favourable and unique associations, positive consumer judgments and feelings, and the two brands separately should have some potential brand equity. There needs to be a logical fit, so the combined brand or marketing activity maximises the advantages of the individual brands while minimising disadvantages. And marketers need to ensure the right fit in values, capabilities and goals, as well as the appropriate balance of brand equity. The aim is that the licensor and the licensee should benefit from the agreement. So we need to ask ourselves a number of questions. What capabilities do we have as a corporation? What resource constraints do we face? People, time and money? What growth or revenue needs do we have? And to assess joint branding opportunities, we need to ask, is it a profitable business venture? How does it help or maintain and strengthen brand equity? And is there any possible risk of dilution of brand equity? Does it offer any extrinsic advantage, such as learning opportunities? Now, one downside is when a partner ceases to be a source of positive brand association. Ingredient branding. So, ingredient branding creates brand equity for materials, components or parts that are necessarily contained within other branded products. And we talked about Intel, for example. Now, ingredient brands attempt to create awareness and preferences for their products that consumers will not buy a host of products that doesn't contain the ingredient. And these branded ingredients are a sign of quality. So the uniformity and predictability of ingredient brands can reduce risk and reinsure consumers. Now, ingredient brands can become industry standards and category point of parity. So ingredient branding has become more prevalent as mature brands seek cost-effective means to differentiate themselves and a means to expand their sales opportunities. Some companies might even create their own ingredient brands. For example, Singapore Airlines. Ingredient brands are not restricted to products and services though. Now, there are some advantages and disadvantages. It's quite similar to co-branding. If an ingredient brand pulls consumers, the firm can generate higher sales at a higher margin. There may be, though, more stable and broader customer demand and better long-term supplier-buyer relationships. You might have two streams of revenue, direct revenue and royalties associated with. There might be two streams of revenue, direct revenue and royalties associated with displaying the ingredient brand. Host product brands might achieve access to new product categories and market segments and distribution channels. Host products can share the product and development costs with the ingredient supplier. Host products may become supply dependent though, or they might believe the branded ingredient doesn't add value. Consumers might even get confused about the real brand if the branded ingredient gains too much equity. So the sustainability of competitive advantages is uncertain here. So there are some guidelines consistent with conventional branding building guidelines, and you should look at Branding Brief 8.3 here in the textbook. So ingredient branding needs to accomplish 4 tasks. Consumers must perceive the ingredient as valuable to the performance and success of the end product. Consumers must be convinced that the ingredient brand is different and superior to the competitors. Distinctive symbol or logo must be designed to show consumers that the host product contains the ingredient. And last and not least, a coordinated push and pull program needs to be put into place so consumers understand the importance and advantages of the branded ingredient. Licensing. Now, licensing creates contractual arrangements by which firms can use names, logos, characters of brand to market their own brands for a fixed fee. And it can be a shortcut to building brand equity. Disney does this a lot. Now, licensing can provide legal protection for trademarks. And bear in mind though, a trademark can become overexposed if marketers adopt a saturation policy. Now, consumers don't know the motivational marketing arrangements, so they can get confused or angry if the relationship is not clear. And if the product fails to live up to consumer expectations, the brand name can become tarnished. So there are some things that we need to look at. Manufacturers can get caught up in licensing a brand that might have produced short-term lift sales. Due to multiple licensing arrangements, licensed entities can become overexposed and wear out quickly. Firms that are obtaining licensing rights to a broad range of licensed entities might therefore diversify risk. And licensees are developing new products and sales and marketing approaches. So sales are not merely a function of the popularity of other brands. Now, some firms conduct marketing research to ensure the proper match of product and license entity, or to provide more precise sales forecasts for effective inventory management. Now, in regards to corporate trademark licensing, this is the licensing of company names, logos, or brands. This can also be used. For example, Harley-Davidson. Firms can generate extra revenues and profits while protecting the trademarks and enhancing the brand image. But at the same time, inappropriate licensing can dilute brand meaning. Celebrity endorsement. Using well-known and admired people to promote products is a widespread phenomenon with a long marketing history. We've just moved it online now as well. Now in the US, roughly 15% of adverts have celebrities, and then if we move to India, roughly 25%, and in Taiwan, it's nearly 50%. A famous person can draw attention to the brand and shape perception of the brands. If we're a fan of the celebrity, we might become fans of the products or services. So, apologies. So there are some qualities that we want in our celebrity endorser. High level of visibility, rich set of potentially useful associations and judgments and feelings. Credible in terms of the expertise, the trustworthiness. They're likable, they're attractive. And we should have some sort of specific association that carries potential product relevance. Oprah Winfrey is a good example here. So what are some of the potential problems? Celebrity endorsers can endorse a certain number of products before it lacks product meaning, or the celebrities are seen as opportunistic or insincere. Celebrities run the risk of overexposure if we look at Branding Brief 8.4. There might be a reasonable match between the celebrity and the product. This is really what we're going for. We don't want just might, we actually want must. And celebrity endorsers can get in trouble or lose popularity, which diminishes their marketing value. We'll talk about that in the discussion today. Some marketers use different celebrities. They might use celebrities who are deceased. Michael Jackson was used this way. Consumers might infer that celebrities are only motivated by money and that they don't believe and use the brand. Celebrities can be difficult to work with. They might follow their own directions and not follow the marketing directions of the brand. They might overpower the brand, so they distract attention from the brand. And featuring celebrities can become a subject of controversy. So we might become too reliant on a celebrity. So what does that mean? Well, it means that marketers need to strategically evaluate and select and use celebrity spokespeople. So choosing a well-known and well-defined celebrity whose associations are relevant to the brand and likely to be transferable. There needs to be a logical fit between the brand and the person. The advertising and communication program should use the celebrity in a creative fashion that highlights the relevant associations and encourages their transfer. And marketing research needs to help identify potential endorser candidates, facilitate the development of the property marketing program, and track its effectiveness. At the same time, celebrities need to manage their own brands to ensure they provide value. So Branding Brief 8.5 fits in well from the textbook here. Welcome to the land of social influencers. So this area of rapid growth has been in the use of social media celebrities for advertising brands. And what we're doing is think of the Instagram generation. So in addition to macro influencers who may command large followings on social media, there are non-celebrity or micro influencers who can hold considerable sway on social media. So these micro influencers, and you probably follow some of these people, might have they generally have a lot more impact on in-store purchases than celebrity influencers. And when we asked people, more than half of respondents suggested they turn to YouTube reviewers to learn about products. Sporting, cultural, or other events. Now, events have their own set of associations that might become linked to a sponsoring brand under certain conditions. And sponsored events can contribute to brand equity by becoming associated to the brand and improving brand awareness, adding new associations or improving the strength, favorability, and uniqueness of existing associations. So the main means by which an event can transfer associations is credibility. The brand is more likable, trustworthy, or expert by association. Brand Focus 8 fits in well here. So marketers can create secondary associations in a number of different ways, linking the brand to third party. And third party sources can be especially credible sources. So these third party sources, when we look at it, we can use their endorsements in our advertising campaigns. For example, Grey Goose. So to sum up, we looked at where other entities might include the company that makes the product, where the product is made, where it's purchased, and some of the related people, places, or things. And we also looked at the extent to which an entity can be leveraged as a source of equity. And this depends on the consumer knowledge and how easily we can appropriate the association or responses to transfer to that brand. So what are some of the key takeaway points? Well, linking the brand to some other entity, some source factor or related person, place or thing may create a new set of associations from the brand to the entity, as well as affect existing brand associations. Brands can borrow equity from their association with people, places, programs, and other non-product based sources. Creating secondary associations may be important if the corresponding brand associations are deficient in some way. Secondary associations might be especially valuable as a means to link favourable brand associations that can serve as points of parity, or to create unique brand associations that can serve as points of difference in positioning a brand. 8 different ways to leverage secondary associations to build brand equity are linking the brand to 1. The company making the product, 2. The country or some other geographic location in which the product originates, 3. Retailers or other channel members that sell the product, 4. Other brands, including ingredient brands, 5. Licensed characters, 6. Famous spokespeople or endorsers, 7. Events, and 8. Third-party sources. The extent to which entities can be leveraged by the brand depends on how easily appropriate associations or responses to the entity transfer to the brand. And overall credibility or attitudinal dimensions may be more likely to transfer than specific attribute and benefit associations, even though they can be transferred too. As marketers, we give up some of the control and take on the challenge of managing secondary associations when the brand is linked to other entities.